Fantasy author, martial artist, and cosplayer. Is there anything my guest today can't do? We'll find out on today's episode of the Bookshelf Odyssey podcast. My guest today is author Danielle Orsino. She is the author of the Fae series, which currently has 5 published books in the series. It's described as abandoned by their creator, 2 factions of powerful angels remain on Earth after the Great War with Lucifer. They struggle to comprehend their creator's plan while their angel wings, a symbol of their angelic lineage, slowly and painfully decay. With no hope of returning to the Shining Kingdom, 2 groups of angels denounce their angelic lineage and develop into separate factions, the Court of Light and the Court of Dark. The 2 monarchs have opposing views on how to govern their kin, but the one belief they agree on is that human worship equals power. What a fascinating premise. I can't wait to read these books. And so Danielle, welcome to the Bookshelf Odyssey podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And I'm glad you're excited about the books.
Yeah, I don't read a lot of fantasy, but it sounds like it's coming from such an original twist to some of the things that some of the fantasy tropes we're used to. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
Thank you.
Yeah. And also today, if you're listening just on the podcast, you're missing out on a visual treat. As I mentioned, Danielle is also a cosplayer and she's here in her cosplay. I don't even know where to begin with your life. It sounds like you've done everything.
I've tried everything at least once. Yes.
There you are. Well, we'll get to some of those. I have some questions about that and about your writing life, and we're going to talk about your books. I'd like to get to know people by what kind of books do they like. So do you have a favorite book or one that you've been reading recently?
Probably my favorite book is Anne Rice's Queen of the Damned, followed by Dr. Seuss's Hop on Pop, because that was the first book I ever read alone, like that I could read, to myself. So I feel like that's always got to be a favorite because that starts you on your journey.
Yep.
So Hop on Pop is one of my favorites. Like I said, Anne Rice, huge influence. And then I'm a comic book girl. So I can reread the Dark Phoenix saga, Days of Future Past, and just keep rolling through anything Wonder Woman. I'm there. So, the reading I do is kind of spans the genres a little bit. I can jump from, Anne Rice, Laurel K. Hamilton, Kim Harrison to Chris Claremont and the X-Men. Hop
on Pop, Dr. Seuss and Anne Rice aren't 2 authors I usually hear together in the same sentence, but I love it. Yeah. I was a big reader, and I can remember the first book I read, without needing help. And it just gave me such a sense of power that I could read the story.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I think, and if I'm going to write, I've got to read. So I have to take it all back to Dr. Seuss and Hop on Pop.
Yeah. Now, as a comic book fan, you mentioned Wonder Woman. Is that your favorite comic?
Yeah, she's my hero.
Yeah.
I have a Wonder Woman tattoo. I grew up on Linda Carter. She's probably influenced everything I've done. You can most likely trace it back. It's like 6 degrees of separation for Kevin Bacon. It's 6 degrees of Wonder Woman. You can probably, trace everything back that I do to Wonder Woman. So I definitely say she's my favorite. I like a lot of the books. The Hikatisha was a great graphic novel with Wonder Woman and Batman. I'm just a Wonder Woman fan, but I love Chris Claremont just on the X-Men in general. I think he changed a lot of what we see in comics, and he made the X-Men relevant again, but still, that was the first time reading like the Dark Phoenix saga that I cared about a villain. And that's probably why it struck me so much. Because before that, it was like Wonder Woman's chasing Cheetah. I don't like Cheetah. It was very kind of one-dimensional. And then I read Claremont and I was like, oh, this just opens up a whole new world to me.
Now, are you a fan at all of the recent Wonder Woman movies? Or do you not talk about those?
No, that's okay. I've had to take some ribbing for this. I love the first one. First one brought tears to my eyes. No Man's Land. It was great. The second one, they tried to do too much, and we didn't get enough cheetah. Like, I think it's always a problem whenever a superhero movie puts 2 villains. It's always like, I haven't seen it done really successfully. And especially when they're both main villains. I've seen it where there's one villain and then there's, kind of the B storyline with another, and it's been okay. But when it came to Wonder Woman 84, I felt like there was so much to live up to. I don't know if it ever really could have gotten there. It didn't have to be what we got, but I think there was also a way to connect all the DCEU together, and they had an opportunity. They missed it. So, I'm kind of like, I'm waiting for the third one. I know they're working on it. The script is apparently done. We're ready to go. And this is Gal's last time as Wonder Woman contractually. So I'm ready for it. We'll see where it goes.
I might agree with you on that. I loved the first one. I mean, just tremendously enjoyed it. I'm not a big comic book reader. My only understanding or experience with Wonder Woman was I might have seen her in some of the old cartoons, or I remember maybe Linda Carter's Wonder Woman, but I was pretty young at the time, or at least just not interested, But so Gal Gadot was really my first experience with Wonder Woman, and I thought she was phenomenal. But the second one, I had some issues with it, I think, and I think you're right there. So we'll see. I'm looking forward to what they'll do. But yeah, that No Man Land scene just almost brought me to tears.
Yeah, it was just. I mean, it was everything you wanted in a Wonder Woman origin. I mean, granted, they took her from World War II, put her in World War I, which I get because they didn't want to compete with Captain America. Right. Totally understand that. And it still worked. It still worked well, which I was surprised. And they had people who had been in the Linda Carter series guesting, like having little cameos. I appreciated that. I just thought the first one was really well put together. The second one, I just don't think we could have just had one villain, and that would have been fine. And just concentrated on that. But from a camp perspective, being that it was set in the 80s, I thought tonally it hit, even down to when she lifted the guy's leg up and was like, shh, to the little girl. I'm like, that's all 80s nod. I'm okay with all of that.
Yeah.
For me, it was the invisible jet. I was like, no, we're not doing this. Like, she's going to turn the jet invisible. I was so like, really, guys, this is the best I could have come up with. I had it all in my head.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is how it should go. This is what we'll do. And then that happened, and I went, really? That's okay. I'm like,
okay,
yeah. It was just one of those where at the end of the movie, I went, okay. The first couple minutes when they were doing the marathon and the contest, I thought was great. Back on Themyscira, I was like, cool, totally in. Like, I had high hopes going in. Once I saw the first, I think it was the first 5-6 minutes of that movie, I'm like, we might be okay. All those rumors, never mind. We might be good. And as the movie was going, I'm like, oh no, oh God, they're really we're really doing this.
Oh no.
Then I was like, okay, not gonna happen, but we'll see what they do with the third one.
I'm a big fan of superhero movies. I mean, that's some of my favorite genre right now. And I think we're getting some pretty good ones. Although lately some would disagree with me, but that's all right. But that's a standout for me. Was that first Wonder Woman movie that really kind of, and Chris Pine. I mean, he's one of my favorite actors. I could watch him.
He nailed it
in anything.
He nailed it. Because that was not my first choice for Steve Trevor. I was like, let's get Nathan Fillion, let's get this one, let's get that one. And I heard him and I went, really, Captain Kirk? And I was kind of like, that's where we're going. But once he came on, it just he worked. It worked from the first to the second. He kept it the same, like just what you would expect Steve Trevor to be like. So I was overall I've got no complaints with it all. I love Gal. I think she does a great job in everything I see her from, Batman versus Superman. I heard she's in the new Shazam movie coming out. She just hits Wonder Woman every time. So script might not have been great in the second one, but she was good. And I'm like, okay, I'd rather have her be really good at times than get somebody in there who can't really pull the character off.
Right.
So I'm okay with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this has turned into a Wonder Woman podcast now.
Sorry.
So.
Yeah.
No. That's fine. Yeah. It's really worth checking out. I guess I'd ask if somebody wanted to read Wonder Woman comic books, where would they start?
I would either suggest starting with George Perez, who redid her origin story in the 80s. I think George Perez has done a phenomenal job. Or I would say Alex Ross's, I think it's the Spirit of Truth. He did a beautiful, beautiful graphic novel that he drew that's rendered that's stunning, but it's a great story. It's a lot about her trying to figure out being Wonder Woman. What's
Mm-hmm.
that like in society right now? And she questions it. She visits Clark, and he finally tells her, go out and see what the world is like. And it's her visiting all different cultures and how she's viewed, which was an interesting take, because when in America, we don't think of a superhero in like a bathing suit as, ooh, scandalous, oh, bad, bad. But other cultures would see her floating in the air in nothing but a bathing suit and be like, oh, no, I don't care if you're here to save me. No, this goes against everything. No. So it's a really, really good place. If they want something more recent, I would say Mike Deodato Jr.'s run, which was 0 Hour, where she loses the mantle of Wonder Woman. Artemis, another Amazon, gets it, and it takes her through the whole stage. And she actually fights a Doomsday clone, which if they're superhero fans or Superman fans, Doomsday. So there's a couple different ways I would go. George Perez, Mike Deodato Jr., or Alex Ross's. Any of those, you'd be on.
Well, let's talk about you and your journey as to becoming a writer. It sounds like you had quite, I don't know, quite the fascinating origin story, maybe.
Yeah, I kind of have my own little superhero origin story going there a little bit. Right.
Yeah. So you, from what I could tell on your website, you started off as a nurse, and then kind of transitioned. How did that work?
I was a nurse. I had been working, graduated school, was working in different places. I had jumped from primary care to like dermatology just to get a specialty under my belt. And then because I was prepping to go to physician assistant school or nurse practitioning school. That was where I wanted to take my career, was to a mid-level provider. I was trying different things out. And then I got a call about a Lyme disease clinic. So I went there and started doing IVs and whatever. And it was one of those things where the universe just kind of put somebody next to me and said, you guys are going to walk the path. I met a patient the very first day I was there. It was his first day dripping. My first day. It was just, we were just kind of there together, like both going, what do we do? And he wound up being my first stick, and we just became friends. He was a big football fan. So am I. So we kind of rib each other. And after about a year and a half, he didn't want to drip anymore. Because the doctor I worked with was on very strict protocol where you did IV treatment 7 days a week. And it didn't matter. Christmas, I was there at Christmas Day, and he just didn't want to do it. He was like, I've got to get back to my life. He had moved up from Pennsylvania to Westchester County just to undergo treatment. And he just didn't want to do it. So the deal he struck with the doctor was that he would drive on a Wednesday, 5 hours, drip for 2, turn around and go home, and then return Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday drip. And that was the deal they worked out. And I've known him long enough, so I was like, yeah, this isn't going to last. And so I rearranged my schedule to be there Wednesdays when I could, and he would come in. And one day he just, I think maybe it was 3 weeks in, he just said, Danny, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, this was a bad idea. It's taking too much time. So we started talking, and he said, if you need me to stay in this chair, do something then. Like, you have to entertain me. I've got to do something. I can't read any more magazines. I can't listen to anything. So I said, okay, tell me something about yourself. Something you haven't told me, something interesting. And he said, I was recruited by the CIA out of college. Well, that snapped my head up immediately, because you don't hear that often. You're just like, what? So I started asking him about the recruiting process, and he's like, well, obviously I didn't take the job. And I'm like, oh, you could have been a secret agent, man, Yeah. And he was like, no, it was for the Trends and Intentions division. He goes, basically, I was just going to be an analyst. And he's like, that's all I was going to do. And I'm like, still, we could have found out what was in Roswell. And, I went down the conspiracy rabbit hole real quick.
Sure.
And as we started talking, it just, I still to this day don't know what it made me say it, but it just started coming to me. And I said, well, you know where Lyme disease comes from? And he goes, Plum Island, blah, blah, blah. Once again, conspiracy theory. And I said, no. I was like, the Fae. And he stopped and looked at me. And he's like, the who? And I was like, Fae, fairies. And he's like, okay. I was like, oh, come on. A big CIA guy like yourself. I know why you're really here. You want to know if the Fae have a nurse-human hybrid running this facility? Like, I just turned it into, and he was like, and then he realized I was putting him in the story. So we sat back and he went, yeah, tell me more about, he's like, who are they again? Like, what's going on? So out of my mouth just came, they're angels that were locked out of heaven. And I was like, and they became our Fae. And he was like, oh. And so every day I tell him a little story about, and I'm making it up off the top of my head. I'm just like, whatever. And we had things go on in the IV room. The doctor, I've said this before, had a big black dog, Labrador, and he would come in, and that's where I was like, oh, and the Dark Fey King had a dark black dragon, and I just was making stuff up.
Mm-hmm.
And he was the one who was like, you need to go home and write this down. He was like, go home and write a book. And I'm like, no, I'm going to physician assistant school where I'm going to pump some faces up with Restylane and make my money. I don't have time to write and be an author. Like, I have plans. And he was like, I'm telling you, you need to write this down. And eventually he kept like cheering me on to do it. And I went home and started writing. I was not writing thinking, oh, I'll publish it one day. I'm going to be an author. It was just, it's in my head. I'm going to get it out. And I opened up a journal notebook and just hand wrote it. Once again, thinking that's how every writer does it,
Mm-hmm.
I had no idea. And I started writing all different books at the same time, because I'd start one, like, I'd just, not that I started like chapter 1, I would just start writing. And then I'd be like, oh, they're not going to know who this is, or they're going to want to know what happened before and what came from it. And I'd open up another journal and start writing. And that's how the series came to be. It was just me handwriting everything, and then not knowing that I'm writing book after book after book in no particular order, with no outline. I had none of that. And that's kind of where it started.
Do you still kind of write by the seat of your pants, as it were, or do you plot them out?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I am not a plotter. I am more, what did my publisher called me, a chaotic writer, a chaotician. Like, she actually had a name for it. And I was like, I feel like I've been diagnosed. It's like, I did not know that. Yeah. So I just write, and then we see what happens. Like, I know my characters enough. I know the series enough to know, but I still can't start there and say chapter 1. No, that doesn't happen for me. I handwrite it. And then when I go to the computer, that's my first edit. I've got the skeleton. Now I got to put the muscle on the bones. And that's where a lot of it happens. And I start massaging the story.
So how did you then realize I've got something I can publish here? And how did that journey go to finding a publisher?
I probably didn't realize I had anything to publish. I was still thinking I'm going to physician assistant school. Like, I can't, I was just getting this out of my head because it was taking up space. Mm-hmm. And then I had a friend who was like, you know what? I happen to know a book publicist. Send her the first couple chapters, just see what she thinks. And she thinks if it's even marketable. And that person came back and said, I want to be your agent. And I was like, okay, what does that mean? So she took the manuscript, book 1, Locked Out of Heaven, and it was pretty big. It was actually book 1 and 2 together. I didn't know that it would become book 2, but Locked Out of Heaven was a lot bigger when I initially was shopping it around. And one of the big 5 imprints took interest, and then their metaphysical division, they were like, this would be good here. We went there, and they were like, we love it, but we only published, I think it was 3 fiction books a year. They said, we just signed our 3rd. Had we known, we would have taken you. They said, so come back in a year, but our suggestion is cut it in half. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm like, if I had a guarantee, I'd feel a little bit better, but obviously they couldn't guarantee me. They just said, we want it. We just can't do it now. So I was getting little interest from some people. I think one of the big 5 had asked me to throw a vampire in there, because they love vampires. And they had said, throw a vampire in and we'll test the vampire origin story out in one of our anthologies and see if it hits, then we'll sign you. So I made up a character that I wound up loving, like, later on in the series, but I had to put a different spin on him. So I started kind of like honing the writing process. And then a friend of mine came forward and she said, I have a publisher. They only do nonfiction. Let's see, they'll take fiction. I was the first fiction book, but after a year, it just wasn't feeling right to me. And then I was on a podcast, Drinking with Authors, and Erica Lance, who's the CEO of Four Horsemen, was interviewing me. And the minute we stopped recording, she just leaned in. She went, so how happy are you at your publisher? And I was like, what? I'm sorry. And I was trying to like play the good game of, yeah, no, it's cool. And she goes, yeah, I'm hearing rumblings. She's like, why don't you come over here to us? She's like, we do fantasy. And I was like, I was like, we can talk about it. And I had a contract, I think in 2 weeks, a month, it was like, so I think that happened in May, and I signed with Four Horsemen by August 1st. And they were just like, okay, here's the plan. And then we were just off to the races.
Nice. Nice. So it always amazes me how everybody's journey is different. You know, some it depends. You just happen to talk to the right person at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
Others, there's you know, a lot of rejection involved, a lot of hard work, and not that you didn't have hard work, but you know, it's all different. And um, what's neat is the end result is you get this wonderful story that's
Mm-hmm.
that's put out into the world, and that's got to be nerve wracking, you know, to say, okay, my book's out. Now, are they going to like it? Or are they going to hate it?
That's for me. That's always, and I had like I tried to get in with, you know, I really wanted to be published by DAW Penguin,
Mm-hmm.
really, and I applied, and it would take them, either I would get a rejection in 5 days, which everybody's like, that's so great, that means they read it, oh my god, and I'm like, okay, and then the last thing I had sent them took like 3 months for them to reject, and somebody was like, that's better because it went through the, you know, and I'm like, okay. I was like, look, you know, it was still rejection. Like, I didn't care. I was still like, this is where I
Yeah.
wanted, you know, before I met Four Horsemen, that's where I wanted to go. So I had my share of rejection where I was like, maybe this was a bad idea. Like, should I be doing this? Should I not? But once I met the Four Horsemen, I realized they have a vision, and I appreciated that. And then it was their idea to put me on the covers in cosplay. That was not me being like, I have to be on the covers of all my books. No,
Yeah.
they came to me with that idea, so that was not me.
Oh, yeah. I was gonna ask next. Then, how did cosplay come into all this? So that I think the website said that you're called the new Fabio of fantasy, which I
Yes,
loved. So,
yes, I yeah.
did you were you a cosplayer first, or did that come just because they needed a model for the cover?
No, I was a cosplayer. I've been a cosplayer for years. I go to the Comic Cons. I'm always dressed up.
Fun.
You know, that was what happened. Was I was always cosplaying as, you know, Harley Quinn, Wonder Woman, Catwoman, Poison Ivy. I had done all these crazy cosplays, and I'd gotten some attention for it. And I was starting to, you know, especially for my Harley Quinn, getting like a little rhythm going. And I was like, all right, this is cool. But then it hit me. It's like, I'm writing these books. How come I'm not dressing up as my own characters? And not that I would go to a Comic Con because people would be like, who's Queen Aurora? I don't know, you know,
Mm-hmm.
or I'm sitting here with horns on my head and they're like, who's the healer? So I was just like, let me see if the costumes I'm describing in the book are even plausible. Like, should she have a cape if she's fighting? Should she not? You know, things like that. So I just started cosplaying more to help my writing than promotion. I wasn't thinking promotion. I was just more thinking, you know, what kind of crown would Aurora wear? Okay, let's work on that. What would this be? What would that be? So when I started cosplaying, it was kind of just, it was more for me and my writing. That's really it. And then from there, I took some pictures because I was getting asked for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd done like a couple interviews in cosplay, and people were like, do you have pictures like that? And I was like, oh, maybe I should do that. And then Faye Magazine reached out to me and said, we think we want to do some kind of, you know, picture thing. And I was like, all right. And they said, why don't you do some test shots? Like, show us what you think you would do. So I did Serena the Mermaid. I did Desdemona, the head of the Royal Guards. And then I did Queen Aurora because I was like, okay, those are my three. I can make those. I can get it done. Took the pictures, and then they just sat. So I was kind of like, well, what do I do with them? When I signed with Four Horsemen, in my head, I had this whole cover plan of all the covers are going to be
Mm-hmm.
these different shades of blue to represent Fae blood being spilt. You know how
Mm-hmm.
authors get, like, we get so in our head that we
Uh-huh.
think everybody's going to get the metaphor, the similes, you know, all this stuff. I got like that with the covers, and I had book 2 cover done. So I showed it to them at the meeting, and I remember Valerie Willis looking and going, no. And I was like, what? I was like, this is a beautiful cover. She goes, honey, it's ice blue and silver. I went, yeah. And she goes, do you know what's going to happen under fluorescent lights? And I'm like, no, what's going to happen? She's like, you're going to wash out. And then she held it up and showed, like, 'cause I sent them a printout of it. And she was
Mm-hmm.
showing me how the cover wouldn't read like under a retail store light. And I never would have thought, like,
Right.
I was so impressed that I came up with like the whole blue thing that I was like, cool, I'm great,
Yeah.
whatever. And so they were going through what I had to submit, as an author for them, just all the information. And they came across the picture of Lady Serena. And so Erica Lance said, what are you doing with these pictures? Do you own them? I said, yeah, they're mine. And she goes, okay. And then Val just went, give me 24 hours. Let's meet tomorrow. I was like, 20? Okay. And they were like, and we need your dragons. I said, they're in there, pick a dragon, any dragon. They're all mine, whatever. I work with an amazing illustrator, Pandy Van. So I knew that was going to be fine. The next day they met with me and pulled up the mock-up of Locked Out of Heaven. And there I was on the cover with my dragon behind me, my full fishtail glory. And they were like, what do you think of this? And I was like, okay. Like, what are we doing?
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, yeah, so we decided you're going to be on the cover of every book. And I'm like, why? And they said, we think it's a neat thing to do. It's different. Name an author who's on the cover. And I was like, okay, how about we try it first? Well, like we debated, and I said, okay, if this is what we're doing, then I have to set some ground rules. I was like, I'm not 25. Don't airbrush me to look 25. And they were like, we agree. I said, when the day comes that you're like, all right, Danielle, we can't do the cover with you anymore. I said, you're going to send me some Haagen-Dazs, sit me down nicely. Don't care what comes out of my mouth. I said, because I'm probably going to call you some really mean names. And the next day we'll make up. And I get to say who's on the cover. Like I have a hand in picking the covers after that.
Yeah.
And they were like, high five, deal, let's go. And after that, I started working on the covers, and I'm getting ready to shoot book 6 coming up shortly in probably about another month or so, month and a half. And we'll shoot the cover for book 6. So, and then I was on a radio show, and they just named me the next Fabio of fantasy. And I was like, and it just stuck. Like people started referring it, and I was like, okay, like that's where we're going. And they were like, yeah. I was like, all right, cool. And that's kind of how it all started.
Yeah. Oh, that's neat. Although I'm not sure if being called Fabio would be good or not. I don't know.
He made a lot of money, so I'm just going to leave it as that's a compliment and
There
kind of
you
put it
go.
over there, so I don't think too hard about it.
Yeah. He can go home and count his money and
Yes,
yeah.
and he's doing just fine.
Now, will your fantasy books? Do you have an end in sight as far as how many books are going to be in the series, or is this ongoing?
Right now, it's ongoing. I have them broken up into volumes. So volume 1 will end with book 6. So that'll be Forgive Us, and that will end volume 1, and then we're going to time jump into volume 2, which puts us in modern day, more urban fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just going to see where it takes me. As long as I can put out quality work and I love what I'm doing and the characters, I feel I'm respecting them, then I'll continue to write. When I feel like I'm waning and I'm losing it, that's when I know I got to start teetering and shutting it down. But I don't know. I kind of have an idea how I want it all to end, but that doesn't mean it's going to go that way.
I like urban fantasy. It's something about bringing magic into a modern day setting kind of thing that really clicks for me. I like that. That's one of my favorite book series is the Dresden Files by Jim Butcher.
Yes.
And absolutely love that series. So, urban fantasies, that's something I definitely look forward to. So,
yeah, I'm doing for volume 2, because it'll still be part of the Birth of the Fae series, but that's Birth of a Succubus. Sure. We deal with more of shadow governments, CIA. That's where my patient is actually the main character and the main protagonist, who he inspired is Agent Graham. We meet him, and he's part of the preternatural surveillance division of the CIA.
Okay.
And so we have a whole new thing to deal with, and we realize the CIA has been protecting us from things that go bump in the night, and national security, supernatural national security is their main concern of the PSD. So they work on that. But at the same time, should a new creature or something pop up, then they want it in containment and they want to study it. And Agent Graham has been working to find out if this Fae human hybrid known as the succubus is really all that she's cracked up to be. And that's kind of where the story picks up, is that, he's trying to figure this out after an incident in Libya and kind of what he's been exposed to, and the supernatural world breaks forth. he goes from being this like normal CIA guy to leading this research team, this research and acquisition team. And then it just kind of goes south from there for everybody involved.
As it does, yeah. That sounds really amazing. Now, is that book 6, or is that going to come after book 6?
You'll get a taste of it in book 6, and then it comes
Okay.
after that. Starts volume 2, but you actually will meet Agent Graham in book 6.
Okay.
I set him up, and you kind of see how the Fey world, and the human world are about to collide.
Mm-hmm.
You get a feel because throughout the book series, the Court of Light, or the Light Fae, are dealing with monarchies across Europe. So they act as advisors and kind of keep everything in check, what's good for them. And they also try to keep Catholicism from sullying the Fae name.
Mm-hmm.
So they're trying to make it that paganism is not a bad thing, which goes well, and sometimes it doesn't. So, you kind of see them interacting with all the European monarchies. Thine Eyes of Mercy, which is book 2, we see them directly interacting with Queen Mary I and what goes down in Tudor London, Tudor England. So as you build, you kind of see it coming. And then by the end of book 6, we're in the modern world. I have an epilogue that puts us square in New York City, modern day, and what we have to deal with. And that's your first glimpse of Agent Graham. And then volume 2 starts from there. Mm-hmm. I'm still trying to figure out the number. Like, do we have to start all over? Can I just make it 7? We haven't figured that out yet. Publisher's still working on that. But Agent Graham shows up, and then from there, he takes the story.
That's amazing. Well, yeah, definitely moving up my TBR list for sure. Yeah, that sounds great. Now, one thing I didn't even ask in all of this, you're also a martial arts expert. Now, is that,
yes.
How did that come about? Yeah, was that something you pursued all your life, or?
That was my life before nursing. I was a competitor. Yeah, I was a competitive martial artist in forms and fighting. My last major tournament was the WKA World Championships for Team USA. I represented in soft style forms. I won my silver medal. And at that point, I was kind of like, I'm done. It's time to walk away. I had transitioned from Taekwondo to Kung Fu and Wushu. So I had done the hard to soft style. So as a competitor, that's kind of what you want to do. You want to see as a forms girl if you can you switch styles? Can you win? Or are you just a one-trick pony? Mm-hmm. So I decided after years of Taekwondo and competing in hard style, I wanted to try the Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon stuff. It was that simple. Like, I just wanted to be Hollywood cool.
Oh, sure.
And I jumped into that and then continued to compete. And I did it for most of my life. It was just time. You have to know when to leave the party. I always say I'd rather leave the party of my own than be told it's time to go. So I was kind of like, all right, I'm done. But I still train. I trained in boxing for years at Lone Wolf. And then when I moved to Charlotte, I found Doug at Ultimate Gym, and then he had strict Muay Thai, and I jumped into that. So I'm still training in some discipline. It just varies now.
Mm-hmm. But not necessarily at a competitive level.
No, Doug's trying to get me to fight. He wants one amateur match, real Muay Thai kickboxing.
Sure.
I'm not there yet. Don't know if I'll ever be. But, it's something cool to think about doing because I do like pushing myself. I like the competitiveness and, going up against and seeing, what I can really do. But, like I said, it might be time to leave the party.
You're a real life Wonder Woman then, maybe.
That's what I'm saying. It all roads lead back to Wonder Woman.
It all comes back to Wonder Woman. That's right. That's awesome. And then I had a question about cosplay. If somebody wanted to get into cosplay, how would they start? What can they expect?
First of all, the community is very open, at least the ones I know now. Somebody might say, oh, down here it's different, or over there it's different. But I know in New York Comic Con specifically, what always struck me was sometimes you get guys that are going for their first time in drag, or somebody's going in drag for the first time. And I noticed the community always goes, you know who they are immediately. Because, and anytime somebody's first even in cosplay, you can tell. The community always goes over and gives them a compliment. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was like so special to me that you kind of can pick out who's there and who's like a little timid, or it's their first time in cosplay. They don't know, the etiquette, the rule. And it's amazing how many people just go up and be like, oh, you did this really well. I like this. So I think overall the community is very welcoming. The only thing I will tell first time cosplayers, don't cosplay a character just because you think it'll get you attention. You know, like you see a million Princess Leia slave girls running around, and they're usually like hot chicks, there's no doubt, but they're there to get their picture taken or get attention. If you ask them, what do you know about Leia? They'd probably look at you and be like, she was in Return of the Jedi. She looked really cool in this. You know, like they don't know the character.
Yeah.
So I would say cosplay somebody you know and you love, and who cares? You know, if you just want to do it for the first time, I've told like there's a couple Wonder Woman people that were like, I really want to do Wonder Woman, but I'm not walking around in a corset, you know, and like booty shorts and that's it. And I'm like, okay, well, one, that's not all our costume, but you don't have to. I'm like, go mid-change. I was like, put the corset on under a white shirt, unbutton the white shirt so you could see it, put on a pair of jeans, put your hair up in a bun, and, you know, glasses and red lipsticks, and then put your bracelets on so you're you're mid-spin. And I was like, it's a nice way to just slowly dip your toe in. You know, think of like there's little things you can do, and just check it out. I mean, you just have to kind of try it and see, or you go the first time and just look. Just go to Comic-Con and watch, and you can go ask a cosplayer. They're always happy to talk to somebody about that. So anybody who wants to just cosplay a character you really love. I don't care if they're male, female in the comic book. You can gender bend them. You can do whatever you want. It's about the exploration and the expression of your fandom. That's it. So whatever you think that is, show it.
So it's really a way of just artistic self-expression, even just, you know.
Yes.
This is who I am, what I like, and how I interpret this character.
It's totally up to you. I remember meeting a gentleman at Comic-Con a couple years ago who did Plastic Man. He loved Plastic Man. Knew all the cartoons, knew every time, the first time appearance in the Justice League. This guy knew everything. He was an orthopedic surgeon. He waits, saves all his time off, and he goes to Comic-Con, and he's there every single day as Plastic Man. But he knows that character, and that's he's like, I'm not on call today. There's no beeper. There's no phone. There's nothing. He's like, it's just me, and this is all I'm doing. It's his escape. And I'm like, that's pretty cool if that's kind of, you know, the escape you need. Awesome. He's like, I don't have any responsibilities today. He's like, I'm not a doctor. He's like, I'm Plastic Man. I'm like, okay, more power to you, Plastic Man. Rock on.
Years ago, I had this idea to dress up as Clark Kent, which I never did, but I thought it would be funny just to have like be in a suit and then my shirt just open a little bit and just wear a Superman t-shirt underneath. And
perfect.
Boom.
There you go. That's perfect.
I'm just about ready to rip open. Yeah.
Yeah. Any minute now, then there's a sign of trouble. Here I come.
Right. Any final words of advice you'd give to someone who wants to be a writer?
Anybody who's new to writing but wants to write and publish, the first thing I tell them is keep writing and keep reading. Even if you don't think this is what you want to publish, just keep writing and keep reading at the same time, because you will learn the trends, you'll learn different things. And I don't think you can be a great writer if you're not a great reader. So I think they kind of go hand in hand. That would be my first thing. Second is don't write by committee. Don't give out your work to too many people and get feedback. Kind of get a really good editor. That's the first thing. And share your ideas, but don't ask everybody, because you have to remember every book is not for everybody. So when authors like, my book's for anybody. Yeah, no. Everybody has their taste. So you have to be very selective, and you go to friends and family and they're like, yeah, this is a good try. Good. You know, you're not getting that feedback, that constructive feedback that you need. So I think it's get a good editor, don't write by committee, or else you'll be changing that book or that manuscript constantly for one person's point of view. You have to write whatever story you think is lacking and that you would like to read, right from there.
Yeah, my wife loves to edit things, and she's helped me out on so many writing projects and things that, get a good editor who will be mean if they have to, but, you know, will tell you this isn't working, here's why. And, you know, just editors are so important. Yeah.
They're underrated, I think. And a lot of people think they can be editors. There's a lot of people out there that think that all is, I'm just going to, I'm going to correct some grammar. I'm going to do this. No, there's so much more to it. I've had Clete Barrett-Smith has worked with me on developmental edits for most of the series. And it was just somebody sitting there saying, okay, here's your plot line. Here's this, here's the A line, here's the B line. This is where you want to take it. And I remember sitting there and him saying, where is this story going to really understand it? Christina Frey, I've used many times. She's my line editor. but she will still notice little things, and she'll come back and go, Danielle, you realize you talked about this character in chapter 3. We have not seen them, and I'm on chapter 20. And I'm like, oh, okay. She's like, got to do something with it or we take it out. You know, she's right there to be like, no, 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 no. Mm-hmm. And you need that. You need that chemistry with somebody who's going to be honest with you, but also want to see your vision through and not want to change everything. I know, like I said, with Christina, she was another one who was like, tell me where the story's going. So if there's certain Easter eggs I have to leave, she's like, I want to know. And I flagged them and I'm like, this has to stay. I know I don't say it again, or I know this doesn't, but this is a clue. And then she'll say, give me the chapter it relates to in the next book, and let me make sure they're matching. So I think that camaraderie is really important.
And I mean, their purpose is to make your story the best story. You know, it's I would probably hazard a guess that every writer, no matter how talented, has an editor. And yeah, so take heart in that.
Yes, that would be the biggest thing, is get a good editor, because there are some bad ones out there. And if you're dyslexic like I am, do not tell the editor you are.
Oh, okay.
Just let it go, because I had that happen where I told, and she really didn't do a good job because she figured she'll never catch this. And because your first line edit, it's only going to catch 80% of the mistakes. It leaves another 20% or so. If you're dyslexic, I ain't finding that 20%. I can almost guarantee, especially if the word abdomen or body's involved, forget it. I'm not finding it anywhere. So I think, you know, you have to have, like I said, that good rapport and really be with somebody you trust.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your time today. And I am really looking forward to reading your books. As I said, I would encourage everyone to check her out. If that sounds like a series you'd like to check out, they're on sale now. Where can folks find you, or what, do you have a website that you'd like to direct them to?
Shameless self-promotion time. As authors, you'll get used to this. Got to get it in, right? You can find me at birthofthefae.com, and that's FAE. You can find me on Instagram at birthofthefae_novel. And then all the books are on Amazon, bookshop.org, target.com, barnesandnobles.com. And then if you're just looking to kind of taste the series and you're not sure, Bookie Call is an app that's kind of like Tinder for books. And you can swipe right or left. Locked Out of Heaven, the first book, is on there. And you can get a write-up of what's it like to read this book, down to if it was going on a first date, what would the first date be like with Locked Out of Heaven? It's a pretty cool app. And I know I've had some people that maybe don't normally read fantasy have gone, checked it out, and then decided, yeah, this is a book for me based on those profiles. And they found other great books on there too. So I think that's a really cool place to go to just kind of test out fantasy if that's not your normal thing.
And it's called Bookie Call?
Bookie Call, yes. Bookie Call. Just like Booty Call, Bookie Call. And you can find it on iOS or Android. Yep. And they're having a big, I think they're doing the first book con in the metaverse. And I think they're giving away the tickets, from what I've heard, to the first, couple hundred people. So you might want to check out Bookie Call, check them out on Instagram, and then see. And some of your favorite authors will be there in the metaverse talking, including yours truly.
Well, talk about shameless plugs now. No.
Yeah, exactly. Let me just get that in there a little bit more.
No, please do. I want to help promote you and what you're doing. So this is fine. Well, I got to check out that app now. That sounds right up my street. So
yeah, you probably love it. I mean, they have nonfiction, fiction books, everything. Sure. Some big authors on there, but it's pretty cool. The first time I read my dating profile for my own book, I was like, wow, I do that? That's pretty cool. Even I was a little bit like, wow, okay, I read this book. Cool.
Oh, awesome. Well, Danielle, thank you so much for coming on, for giving up some of your valuable time to be here, and best of luck to you in all your future endeavors.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It was lovely speaking with you.
Yes, same to you. Thank you.
Thank you.